substrate at the foot of your love. I lift my shirt up. I was carried to Ohio in a swarm of bees. I never married, but Ohio don't remember me. Lay my head on the hood of your car. I take it too far. Lay my head on the hood of your car.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Monday, August 14th, 2017. My name is Sam Seder. This is the four-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live, steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, 1 dead, 35 injured by an alt-right terrorist. Meanwhile, Charlottesville exposes that the alt-right is just another way to say neo-Nazis and Klan. And it also exposes Trump is one of them, as he refuses to specifically condemn the fascists. Meanwhile, the Charlottesville cops sidelined as they were outgunned by the neo-fascists. Also on the program, as a country, we are way overdue to stop honoring secessionist white supremacists. Meanwhile, more White House infighting. Repeal and replace still alive, and Scott Pruitt's secret assault on our environment. All that and more on today's program. So it's just me and Matt in the studio today. We switched things around a little bit. I wanted to come on and talk about what happened over the weekend, starting with Friday night. Obviously, I think people are largely aware of the events that have taken place in Charlottesville, leaving one woman dead. Her name was Heather Heyer. She was a paralegal who was there protesting. And I should say, she was at a firm that specialized in debt relief. But nevertheless, she was there protesting. You all know I think by now, I would imagine you all know what happened. A 20-year-old, James Alex Fields, decided at one point to drive his car. And I want to make this clear because there seems to be some confusion by folks who have not seen the video, and we're not going to play the video. It's just too graphic. And if it's been on the news, so if you want to see it, you can see it. But some people, I guess, got the impression that he sort of panicked, was in some type of panic mode because his car was being surrounded. No, it's quite clear from the video that he drove into a crowd, almost like it was a head-on collision. Many people could not see that he was doing that because there were two cars that were trying to very slowly inch their way through the crowd. And then this guy drove down basically an empty street until you hit the wave of protesters who were just going around these cars and smashed into the cars, sending people flying. And then is when he gunned it in reverse to get away. I have no idea what the guy thought he was doing. Well, I mean, I do. I mean, it's fairly apparent what he was doing. But let's start with Friday night. This was a rally that was called by a Unite the Right organization. And here is David Duke, tells an NBC reporter what Unite the Right represents.
Today represent to you? The camera's right here. What does today represent to you?
This represents a turning point for the people of this country. We are determined to take our country back. We're going to fulfill the promises of Donald Trump. That's what we believed in. That's why we voted for Donald Trump, because he said he's going to take our country back. That's what we got to do.
Yeah, so this was a Unite the Right to take their country back. And I think it's not hard to imagine whom David Duke believes has taken the country. People, well, I should say, really, I mean, it's conceivable there was a woman as part of the Unite the Right, but it appears to have been all male. And they were descending on Charlottesville because of Charlottesville's plan to move or remove a statue of Robert E. Lee. And so Friday night, about 300 or 400, I would say, maybe 500 members of the alt-right. Some of them were alt-knights. Some of them were Ku Klux Klan. Some were 3% Rising. Some were neo-Nazis. Some were just general militia, perhaps. I believe the group that James Alex Fields came from is known as Vanguard America. Blood and soil is their slogan, which I believe is a neo-Nazi organization. The Nazis, I believe, were blood and soil. Here is them chanting, is this number 2? All right, this is them chanting, "You will not replace us." These white guys are afraid of being replaced in some fashion. I mean, to a certain extent, it looks more like closer to like somewhere between 500 and 1,000 people, right? And they're all carrying tiki torches. You should know that Tiki Torches, the company that makes these things, disavowed it. But there is some imagery there, right? Of white men marching with torches. They don't have any hoods on, although next time they might think better than that. But here are those same white guys with torches chanting "blood and soil," which again is a Nazi slogan. Vanguard America takes it their manifesto says it says American fascism. America was built in the image of the Roman Republic. Its capital, imagery, and goals were set with good intentions on that foundation. The road to hell is paved with good intentions, and our nation is surrounded in brimstone. Now the time for a new Caesar to revive the American spirit has dawned. They want to uphold the natural order that binds them. Right? Just an exchange of ideas. Strong social order based on natural truths that's necessary to the health of any society. Here is them chanting, well, blood and soil. So, and these guys in Vanguard America, as they look for their new Caesar, dress apparently like in a Donald Trump golf outfit. I'm not joking. It's this white shirt and tan pants. And so on Friday night, you had these fascist groups met by a wide range of counter-protesters, ranging from, I think, indivisible groups, Black Lives Matter groups, anti-fascist groups, Antifa, and others. I mean, this is a wide array of people. And even though, I mean, I have here an affidavit that the Charlottesville police filed on 8/11, which was what, Friday night. And they were anticipating at least 1,000 fascists attending, members of the alt-right, if you will. And so they were aware that there was going to be these problems. But by all accounts, they were sidelined. And supposedly it was because they were afraid they were basically outgunned. We'll talk more about that, but they were outgunned primarily by these state militias, some 3%ers who showed up ostensibly to make sure that people had a right to speak. That's how twisted these people are. We're going to show up in camo with semi-automatic rifles and shotguns to make sure that people's First Amendment rights are protected. Well, it didn't work out so well. Here is a brawl that takes place on Friday night.
Back up. You gotta get footage. Come on. Go right there. That's as far as you can go, baby. Okay. Hold me. I got you. Holy shit.
There was a lot of this, and real failure by the police force in Charlottesville to get in between these things. But of course, you know, who knows what happens when you have like these squads of militia people. So then on Saturday, what happens is at about noon, you have, and I should say there was also, I guess, 100 Christian ministers also protesting these people. So it was a wide range of people, as well as, I guess, a lot of Charlottesville folks who were who are just unhappy with a lot of these out-of-town white supremacists coming to, and Nazi groups coming to the protest. So you had at about noon the fascists basically left the park that they were attempting to occupy. I guess it's Lee Park. And the counter-protesters were marching, and from what I understand, it was sort of a celebratory type of situation where they were marching down this street. Like I say, they were walking around two cars that were obviously sort of like just caught in it. We're slowly going through the crowd, and this 20-year-old James Alex Fields rammed his car into them, killing one woman and injuring 35. Here is, this is really sort of difficult. Apparently this guy was from Ohio. And here are some journalists who had found his mom, a woman named Samantha Bloom, I guess, in Maumee, Ohio. And, oh, is she in a wheelchair there? It's possible.
She might be sitting on the
I've seen
ground,
reports
too.
that she's a paraplegic, but I'm not sure about that. I don't know. I don't know if she's sitting on the ground or what the story is. But here it is as journalists break the news to his mother. And this is what I think is, really important to understand. This guy, James Alex Fields, identified this rally in his mind as an alt-right rally. In his mind, he believed he was a member of the alt-right. In showing up wearing the Vanguard America garb and literally a shield that he was carrying. And you can go to bloodandsoil.org to read their manifesto, calling for fascism, saying the free market's not the enemy, but global finance is, all of the trappings. None of the specific words. You could sit down and deliver this manifesto to a Dave Rubin, let's say, and he would just sit there and say, I haven't heard anything explicitly racist. But they all know what they're talking about. This is the alt-right. People have said to me, like, why aren't you calling them Nazis and KKK? I am. They're the alt-right. That's the thing that binds them. Their belief system is perhaps slightly nuanced and different depending on each particular group. But they share the common agenda. And certainly that's how he identified it. And here is his mom, who clearly kept herself at arm's length from his politics and never imagined just how rancid those politics were.
Virginia or somewhere.
That's what,
right?
yeah,
Okay.
Charlottesville, Virginia. And again, right now he's just accused, but there was video of him running his car into the crowd. And
Running his car into a crowd of people?
Correct. Yeah.
Did it hurt anybody?
Yeah, there's one fatality, and I would say 24 people have been injured. Sorry. Get a quote?
My name's Samantha Bloom. I'm his mother.
Very good. I'm so sorry. This is a terrible way for you to hear this news.
You haven't been notified at all about this?
No.
Wow. So this is the first you're learning of it.
So sorry. Was there any indication that this might be kind of where he was going?
I just knew he was going to a rally. I mean, you know, I try to stay out of his political views. We don't, I don't really get too involved. I moved him out to his own apartment, so I'm watching his cat. I mean,
the human part beats great.
Like I said, I don't really talk to him about his, political views. I mean, so I don't really understand or what the rally was about or anything. So.
Okay.
I just know there is he did mention, what is Albright? What is it?
Alt-right?
Albright.
No, alt-right. It's like alternative right.
Right.
It's
Yeah,
ultra-conservative white supremacist organizations.
I didn't know it was white supremacists. I thought it had something to do with Trump. Trump's not a supremacist.
Yeah. Thought it had something to do with Trump. She was actually right about that. Had a lot to do with Trump. And this is, to the extent that there's some lessons to be learned from Charlottesville, and obviously, certainly for the police forces, there are. But there seems to be a lot of lessons that need to be learned by the mainstream media, and for just broadly speaking, the American public when it comes to Donald Trump. Those guys in the vanguard America certainly think of themselves as the alt-right. They are crying out literally in their manifesto for a new Caesar and then go dressing like Donald Trump at the golf course. And I mean, it's the denial on behalf of the American public in some respects to this. It's been quite obvious. Steve Bannon doesn't just end up there by chance. Jeff Sessions doesn't just end up there by chance. Stephen Miller doesn't just end up there by chance. Yeah, I mean, I know they're white supremacists. White nationalists. I overlook that because they're really good. I mean, you can really write a press release. And here is Donald Trump's response. And, I was watching, I guess, some CNN this weekend. And they had a guy on, I can't remember his name. He was apparently George Bush's outreach guy. And he was trying to make the argument that if you listen to Trump's whole speech on this, and there was not whole speech, it was a brief comment that he made at some type of event for veterans that he was holding. They didn't cancel the event, and they did not hold the event. They just sort of integrated this into it. And, well, the comment that this guy was arguing was that, Barack Obama, when there was a shooting in a black church by a guy who turned out to be a white supremacist, he didn't come out first thing and attack white supremacy. He waited until he went down for the memorial. Now, I think it's pretty obvious there's a difference between a lone gunman shooting something and literally a protest carrying the literal banner of white supremacy. It's not like you might say, like, we don't know the details of this driver in the car. But clearly this was an environment. I mean, there was a million different ways you could address this. And here is Donald Trump, the way he addressed it.
Following the terrible events unfolding in Charlottesville, Virginia, we condemn in the strongest possible terms this egregious display of hatred, bigotry, and violence on many sides. On many sides. It's been going on for a long time in our country. Not Donald Trump, not Barack Obama. This has been going on for a long, long time. There's no place in America. What is vital now is a swift restoration of law and order and the protection of innocent lives. No citizen should ever fear for their safety and security in our society, and no child should ever be afraid to go outside and play or be with their parents and have a good time. I just got off the phone with the governor of Virginia, Terry McAuliffe.
All right, pause it for a second. Understand, he's reading from a prepared statement. What is he referring to? Children can't go out and play. What has that got to do with white supremacy? What has that got to do with neo-Nazis chanting Nazi slogans? What has that got to do with 500-600 white guys with torches marching through the streets in the middle of the night? What is that? What if children are going out to play? And it's all sides. What is it that all sides were doing? Continue.
Agreed that the hate and the division must stop, and must stop right now. We have to come together as Americans with love for our nation and true affection, really, and I say this so strongly, true affection for each other. Our country is doing very well in so many ways. We have record, just absolute record employment. We have unemployment, the lowest it's been in almost 17 years. We have companies pouring into our...
Who wants to bet right now whether or not he's going to say how he won the Electoral College? I mean, the guy's demented, and I think that's, pretty clear. But he will not call these people out specifically. Go.
Our country, Foxconn and car companies and so many others, they're coming back to our country. We're renegotiating trade deals to make them great for our country and great for the American worker. We have so many incredible things happening in our country. So when I watch Charlottesville, to me, it's very, very sad. I want to salute the great work of the state and police in Virginia, incredible people, law enforcement, incredible people, and also the National Guard. They've really been working smart and working hard. They've been doing a terrific job. Federal authorities are also providing tremendous support to the governor. He thanked me for that. And we are here to provide whatever other assistance is needed. We are ready, willing, and able. Above all else, let's remember this truth. No matter our color, creed, religion, or political party, we are all Americans first. We love our country. We love our God. We love our flag. We're proud of our country. We're proud of who we are. So we want to get the situation straightened out in Charlottesville, and we want to study it. And we want to see what we're doing wrong as a country where things like this can happen. My administration is restoring the sacred bonds of loyalty between this nation and its citizens. But our citizens must also restore the bonds of trust and loyalty between one another. We must love each other, respect each other, and cherish our history and our future together. So
cherish our history. I mean, that's what that march was about, right? It was white supremacists marching down to a park in the middle of the night, cherishing the statue of Robert E. Lee. And the history, of course, that Robert E. Lee represents there is one of the success of segregationists to combat the scourge of Reconstruction and impose Jim Crow laws. That statue didn't go up in the wake of the of the Civil War. That statue went up 50 years later. It was commissioned in 1917. It went up in 1924 at the height of the power of the KKK as Jim Crow laws were instituted as a pushback to Reconstructionism. As white people were reasserting themselves in places like that. It wasn't about the Civil War. It was about segregation. It was about reminding black people of their place in a place like Virginia at that time. And that is the history that we should be cherishing? I mean, what history is he talking about? I don't know if he knows the words that he's reading. I don't know if he understands the implications of them. But it's not like he's got such a great, stellar race record himself. And, you know, at one point, he's probably got to realize, like, I mean, I don't think there's really, it's necessary to provide any benefit of the doubt to this guy. But it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if he is a horrible racist, but we could never tell because of his policies. And it doesn't matter if he's a secret non-racist or just doesn't feel that strongly about it, but has empowered, emboldened racists in and without the government. And that's what we have. I mean, that's what he is. And understand, you know, this the other topic that has come up to a certain extent is this notion of him saying the words, right? Him saying the words, and it's been compared to the idea of Barack Obama never saying whatever it was. What do they want him to say? Radical Islamic extremism. Understand the difference between calling out neo-fascists, calling out neo-Confederates, calling out white supremacists, neo-Nazis, and calling out radical Islamic extremism or extremists. No one's asking Donald Trump to indict white people based upon their whiteness. That would be him coming out and bemoaning radical white extremism or radical Christian Judeo extremism. That's when extremists or extremism becomes the modifier of the thing that exists and is permanent and fundamental. That's why radical Islamic extremism is different than calling someone a white supremacist. Because radical Islamic extremism implies that there's something fundamental in Islam that when it's taken to its extreme, you logically get terrorism. And that's just simply not the case. You would never say radical Judeo-Christian extremism. You would never say that Judeo-Christian values necessarily taken to their extreme necessarily lead to fascists and neo-Confederates. So when you talk about white supremacists, it's the supremacy that you're attacking, and the white is the modifier. And so there's no comparison there. And when you're talking about a bunch of people who have gathered, protests and counter-protests, and you're saying they were all bad. You know, like this is the perfect Sam Harris tweet that I just saw. Someone sent me. It's something to the effect of, he tweeted out, in 2017, I don't know why 2017 is really the issue. All identity politics is detestable. But surely white identity politics is the most detestable at all. This is the soft alt-right, right? It's basically what Donald Trump says. It's all bad. It's all bad. And then they clarified Donald Trump's statement. The White House did, saying, quote, of course that includes white supremacist, KKK, neo-Nazi, and all extremist groups. It includes it? It includes it. Well, I think that was pretty clear from his original statements. I'm denouncing all of them. They're all bad. And even when you say they're all bad, and one is actually even worse, but they're all bad. They've all crossed the threshold. But they're all in the pool. Just one got really wet, and the other one got sort of wet. It's the same game. I mean, that's why, you know, when we call out the Sam Harrises and the Dave Rubins, who don't see explicit, I didn't see any explicit Islamophobia. There's coding, and this is the way that they grow.
I've seen them termed the alt-light, which might be.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I don't know what all identity politics is detestable. When you call them both detestable, but one's more detestable, what does that mean? What does that mean? Of course it includes the KKK. Now, of course, Donald Trump won't even come out and go that far. And why is that? Why is it? Are we chasing ghosts here? I don't know. Let's look at what Stormfront thinks. This is on the Daily Stormer. I think it was yesterday, the day before. Right after Trump's comments. Trump's comments were good. He didn't attack us. He just said the nation should come together. Nothing specific against us. He said that we need to study why people are so angry and implied that there was hate, ... on both sides. He implied the Antifa are haters. There was virtually no counter-signaling of us at all. He said he loves us all. Also refused to answer a question about the white nationalists supporting him. No condemnation at all. When asked to condemn, he just walked out of the room. Really, really good. God bless him. This is great for them. Because you can be just a Trump supporter and tell your mom you're just going to an alt-right rally. And you can believe you're not a Klansman or a neo-Nazi. A rose by any other name, folks.
You're a free speech history buff.
Exactly. I just care about this country. And then you got the 3%ers. Listen to this statement. They released this, I guess it was on Saturday. The 3%ers issued a stand-down order in response to the violent protests. They occurred today, happened when Antifa and BLM showed up to counter-protest against alt-right white supremacists and Nazi groups who were scheduled to gather in Charlottesville's Emancipation Park to protest the city's decision to remove a Confederate statue there. While we support and defend everyone's right to free speech, we will not align ourselves with any type of racist group. We cannot have this organization tainted by news outlets, as they will most certainly report we have aligned ourselves with white supremacists and Nazis. These are the guys who showed up in the military gear with weapons that apparently were significant enough that the cops in Charlottesville were too nervous to engage. These guys apparently, they mobilized to protect the free speech rights of everybody there, because apparently they're worried that the cops are going to inhibit their speech. I don't remember seeing these guys at the BLM protests in St. Louis. Were they there? I just don't remember seeing them there. Were they surrounding Zuccotti Park to protect protesters of Occupy from the cops? I just don't remember seeing that. Maybe I'm just forgetting. Or maybe they just, hey, maybe this is an innovation for them. Unbelievable. But apparently they're standing down going forward, whatever that means. They're very proud about how they mobilize. Lunatics. Lunatics. More on these 3%ers. This is, according to Christian Yingling, the leader of the Pennsylvania Lightfoot Militia, as they call themselves. The show of strength was about allegiance to the Constitution. He said he and his troops convoyed in to Charlottesville early. Look at these morons. They're still playing like Army Man.
G.I. Joes, and they can afford the gear now.
Exactly. They went in early Saturday to defend free speech by maintaining civic order so everyone present could voice an opinion regardless of their views, this is according to Commander Yingling. The fact that no shots were fired, Yingling said, was a testament to the discipline of the 32 brave souls serving under me during this particular operation.
Oh, my God.
I mean, this is just nuts. In a telephone interview on Sunday, he sought to dispel the absurd idea in the public's mind that his group of patriots was allied or sympathetic to white nationalists. According to this piece, many militia units in the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast have mutual defense agreements, Yingling said, because he's overseen several militia responses at contentious gatherings in recent months, helping keep the peace at right-wing public events in Boston, in Gettysburg, and Harris, Pennsylvania, and at an April 29 rally in Harrisburg for President Trump. When his group arrived in Charlottesville, we put our own beliefs off to the side, Yingling said. Not one of my people said a word. They were given specific orders to remain quiet the entire time we were there. Our mission was to help people exercise their First Amendment rights without being physically assaulted. Well, guess what, buddy? You failed. Big time. I guess you're going to get demoted. Maybe it's time for you to do some KP duty. It was a resounding success until we were just so drastically outnumbered that we couldn't stop the craziness. It was nothing short of horrifying. This guy went to the George W. Bush School of Terrorism Prevention. We'll just take a mulligan on the real disaster that was there and ignore the fact that we were responsible for the cops standing down because they didn't want to engage with several hundred guys with semi-automatic weapons. Unbelievable. This country's really effed up. It's really effed up. I mean, I don't know how you send cops out there to deal with that.
I feel like this is eventually going to need a big show forced by something like the National Guard. I mean, I don't know that the Trump administration is going to deploy that.
No. And frankly, it wouldn't have been terribly easy to tell these guys apart. They were all in like camo gear. All right, let's just do one or two more clips and then we'll go into the theoretical fun half today. But honestly, like, you know, we talk about this stuff from time to time on this program. But, I mean, I think we got to spend more time on this alt-right stuff. And frankly, you know, on those who provide the gateway. I really do think that Dave Rubin, despite the fact that he's, you know, not terribly bright, the idea that this guy is, you know, going to the 92nd Y in New York and moderating talks. Look, one got to be president, right? Here is the Unite the Right organizer, Jason Kessler, who, I don't know, some people want brought up on charges. I'm not sure what charges you could bring up in this guy, but I certainly appreciate the fact that, I mean, look, he already had his rally, right? I know it's wrong to silence his free speech.
How many chances do these people need to send their message correctly?
Right. His free speech opportunities to have a press conference. But here is Kessler, the organizer, at the Charlottesville City Hall. This was on Sunday, right? Trying to address the violence and give his side of the story. And some very rude protesters. Look, I hate rudeness in all its form. They're both wrong here. One guy for talking about the rally in support of white supremacy, neo-Confederism, celebrating the subjugation of an entire race of people in this country. That guy's wrong. And then these other people who are being so rude to interrupt him. They're all wrong. Obviously, the guy who is promoting and wants us to cherish the legacy of lynchings and rapings and slavery is a little bit is more wrong. But the other people are rude. So you decide.
Resorting to violence. Yesterday,
murder now! Fight for murder now! Fight for murder! Invited
I'll be in Washington.
I don't know why the music is in there, but there were other videos there too. Basically, he was shouted down and had to be escorted out by the police. Boy, real embarrassment for white people that they don't stand up unless they have weapons and tiki torches. All right, one more clip. So it was sort of extraordinary. And, you know, as far as I can tell, I don't know if there were people who were doxxed, but there were certainly people who were ID'd online yesterday and of the days following. I mean, people were crowdsourcing the pictures and asking people and publishing. And frankly, I'm a little uncomfortable with doxing, which is when you put up people's addresses, and because that can be problematic, and you're putting this stuff out there for people to do bad things. You're encouraging them to contact these people. You're encouraging them to go to their houses when you dox. But IDing people who are out there in a public protest, I'm not as concerned with, frankly. I mean, that's why, of course, they used to wear hoods, right? Everybody took lessons from Charlottesville, that if you're going to be in the KKK, there was a reason why your forefathers did it that way. Because you still got to run the local haircut place and the general store.
Hot dog restaurant, apparently, is one guy.
Exactly. But here is one of the protesters out. He was saying it loud and proud, screaming. There are photographs of this guy out there. Was, I guess, quickly ID'd. I don't know if it was from some crowdsourcing or just because people were like, hey, I saw that guy at school.
So, yeah, some of his classmates noticed him.
Guy's name. Well, here is the report on the local KTVN. This is this kid turns out to be a University of Nevada, Reno student. And people are on Twitter like, that time you're the guy who sits in your English class went to a white supremacy rally. Here is, listen to this guy. I guess he was interviewed in this too. And it's pretty amazing how he's trying to sort of like, can't quite connect the dots here.
Among the thousands protesting in Charlottesville yesterday was 20-year-old Reno resident Peter Siatanovich. Siatanovich is an undergraduate student at UNR. He told us he traveled to Charlottesville to march in the Unite the Right rally. You may have seen this photo on social media. Siatanovich received a lot of negative attention online as the photo began circulating. Yesterday, we spoke with him by phone. Here's what he had to say.
I came to this march trying to send the message that white European culture has the right to be here just like every other culture. It is not perfect.
Pause it for 1 second. Have you even heard anybody say that white European culture does not have a right to be here? I mean, putting aside the fantastical notion that you could somehow eradicate white European culture from our nation, put that aside. Like, is there anybody you've ever heard who has advocated for that? Now, I will be fair. Maybe the purity of that culture could be tainted, but I don't even know that that has existed untainted since, I don't know, there was at least, the Pilgrims started using fish to fertilize their crops.
Well, like any other culture seems like an appeal to multiculturalism.
So let me get this straight. He went down to march in front of the Robert E. Lee statue with torches to promote multiculturalism. Interesting. All right, let's hear.
European culture has the right to be here just like every other culture. It is not perfect. There are flaws to it, of course. I do not deny that. However, I believe that with the replacement of the statue, it will just be the slow replacement of white heritage within the United States, of the people who fought and defended, built their states and their homeland in this new continent as much as they could. And Robert E. Lee is a great example of it. He wasn't a perfect man by any sense of the word, but I want to honor and respect that what he stood for during his time.
The university
released... I would love to have heard a follow-up. Like, what is that? What is that? Built his state, honored his state. He was, let's be clear. He was a traitor to the United States of America. If you really, I mean, if you really want to put it, he was a traitor to the United States of America. He led an army against the United States, right? To the victor. Victor gets to write the history. Sorry, Bob. I mean, he would have built the nation if it was like that HBO show that they're going to do.
It built the Confederacy? Is that
Right.
what he's talking about?
Oh, no. I'm talking about his Mexican-American War work. He was much better in the Mexican-American War. Unbelievable. Well, hope that guy has fun at class tomorrow. All right, we got to take a quick break. When we come back, we will talk a little more about this and about the intense infighting going on at the White House. That's good. Always appreciative of that. I don't know. We'll take your phone calls and, oh, you know what? Let's read this letter too. This is pretty good. So I just want to read this before. So apparently, via our North Dakota correspondent, Matt Lack, who scours the, what paper was this?
The Forum, Fargo Forum.
The Fargo Forum for stories every day. Apparently a family in Fargo, the Tefts, found out that their son went to this rally. And they wrote a letter to the Fargo Forum. My name is Pierce Teft, and I'm writing to all with regards to my youngest son, Peter Teft, an avowed white nationalist who has been featured in a number of local news stories over the last several months. On Friday night, my son traveled to Charlottesville, Virginia, and was interviewed by a national news outlet while marching with reported white nationalists who allegedly went on to kill a person. I, along with all his siblings and in his entire family, wish to loudly repudiate my son's vile, hateful, and racist rhetoric and actions. We do not know specifically where he learned these beliefs. He did not learn them at home. I've shared my home and hearth with friends and acquaintances of every race, gender, and creed. I have taught all my children that all men and women are created equal, that we must love each other all the same. Evidently, Peter has chosen to unlearn these lessons, much to my and his family's heartbreak and distress. We have been silent up to now, but now we see this was a mistake. It was the silence of good people that allowed the Nazis to flourish the first time around, and it's the silence of good people that's allowing them to flourish now. Peter Teft, my son, is not welcome at our family gatherings any longer. I pray my prodigal son will renounce his hateful beliefs and return home. Then and only then will I lay out the feast. His hateful opinions are bringing hateful rhetoric to his siblings, cousins, nieces, and nephews, as well as his parents. Why must we be guilty by association? Again, none of his beliefs were learned at home. We do not, never have, never will, accepted his twisted worldview. He once joked, quote, the thing about us fascists is it's not that we don't believe in freedom of speech. You can say whatever you want. We'll just throw you in an oven. Peter, you will have to shovel our bodies into the oven too. Please, son, renounce the hate, accept and love all. That's a father to his son. I mean, of course, what's missing from this letter is him criticizing all the other people, too. All just the general bad things in society.
Also, Antifa can't come for dinner either.
Right. And other people's kids. I don't know why he has to acknowledge only his kids' problems, not other people's kids. Really, wow. I mean, you know, if you want to find something encouraging about this weekend is that people are being pretty vigilant when faced with it, and hopefully they will have woken up when those going around saying they're alt-right. I don't care if they attended that rally or not. I don't care if they denounce those Nazis or not. You support alt-right, you're just fertilizing the soil. If you try and pretend that this in some way is silencing free speech, that these things should be explored, you understand, you're fertilizing the same soil. You have a right to do it, but others have a right to call you out on it. All right, we're going to take a quick break. 646-257-3920 is the number. We'll take your IMs. We'll be back in a minute. Just a couple more. GoDaddy has apparently told Daily Stormer they have 24 hours. They have infringed upon their users' agreement. I'll just give you a sense of. I don't know if I want to put up any images from this, but just to give you a sense of the sort of intersectionality here. That Daily Stormer, of course, is the sort of premier neo-Nazi website in the country, and yesterday they had on their one of their stories, Heather Heyer. This is the woman who was killed by the alt-right terrorist. Heather Heyer, woman killed in road rage incident, was a fat, childless 32-year-old slut. Here are 5 fat facts you need to know, it says. She was fat and a drain on society. Too fat to dodge a Dodge. Protesting white men. She was attending the rally to protest white men. Her social media history shows she sought complete abolition of the white race. She was a Bernie Sanders supporter as well. Driver was a straight player. And publicity stunt by Dodge. I mean, they're really having fun with it. But there's a disclaimer. We here at the Daily Stormer are opposed to violence. We seek revolution through the education of the masses. It's all about learning, folks. When the information is available to the people, systemic change will be inevitable and unavoidable. Anyone suggesting or promoting violence in the comments section will be immediately banned permanently. There you have it. Let's go to the phones. You're calling from a 614 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
This is Senator Mitch McConnell. I'd like to speak with Michael Brookstein, please.
Yeah, I'm sorry he's not here today.
Well, that's a shame. I understand. Congratulations are in order. He's got his own little radio program over there.
He does. I'm not sure I'm in the mood for this right now. I'm a little bit annoyed by the stories of the day.
We'll take it up another day.
All right, great. I appreciate that.
All right, great.
I didn't think it was a great McConnell. I mean, I think that was part of it.
I could imagine McConnell saying that we'll take it up another day, though.
I can't imagine that, too. Got to just work on the accent. Got to be a little bit more mumbly. This guy sounded more like a movie star, didn't he? Yeah. Like a guy narrating a...
Too cool.
Too cool.
McConnell.
Yeah, a little bit too... Maybe Mitch McConnell back in his earlier days. Maybe the road not taken, Mitch McConnell. Fortunately, Donald Trump has shown that he does have the ability to single out individuals. And Kenneth Frazier of Merck, I imagine a guy whose business practices I'm not terribly excited about, big pharmaceutical. But at the very least, at least he has some measure of conscience, although I don't know why he was there in the first place. Like, who is he kidding? He is considered one of the most prominent black CEOs in the country. Put out a statement, America's leaders must honor our fundamental values by clearly rejecting expressions of hatred, bigotry, and group supremacy. As he quit Donald Trump's Manufacturing Council on Monday over Trump's failure to condemn white supremacists. Really? Is this really when you became aware of this, or it just became untenable? Either way, I'm glad he resigned. Trump, of course, sees problems on all sides. In this instance, however, apparently he got off on Twitter. Now that Ken Frazier of Merck Pharma has resigned from President's Manufacturing Council, he will have more time to lower rip-off drug prices. You know, I'll tell you what the beauty of this tweet is. It shows you perfectly how Donald Trump uses his faux populism. Right? I'm going to ignore the reason why he did this. Not going to address it. I'm going to talk as if there's no ability from where I'm sitting to lower drug prices in any way. And blame it on the black CEO. That's like that's like a 3 for Thursday Frazier did not mention the violence in Charlottesville, Virginia in his statement, but he did say that as a matter of personal conscience, I feel a responsibility to take a stand against intolerance and extremism. He was the only black male CEO named to the council in January. And, you know, I'm sorry, a little late in the day, it seems to me, to get personal conscience points. Got to think it might have occurred to you a little bit earlier. Like, hey, wait a second. Isn't this the same guy who was leading these white nationalists during the campaign? I really thought he turned a corner. Yeah.
Maybe Trump asked him, what does he have to lose?
What do you got to lose? Honestly, what do you got to lose? Calling from a 651 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
What's up? It's Chris Lapaco. How you guys doing today?
Chris Lapaco. Doing all right. How you doing?
Hi. Hey, man. Pretty angry with the country right now. Like this weekend, it's give me 1 second here. It's just like it's taken a really sharp turn recently. Like the administration started this. They took a real sharp, hard turn towards right nationalism probably a couple weeks ago. I just noticed it. It was like a general type of feeling. And this is the result. And this is also the result of years of people saying like, oh, I'm going to run over Black Lives Matter protesters if they get in my way. People put that on Facebook all the time. I saw it and befriended my friends. You know what I'm saying? Like, we just let this slip and slide for years and years and years. I support people being able to march, but if you need sticks and torches to speak and you need to bring your guns out and everything, you must have a pretty limited vocabulary. I don't know why you need that stuff to speak. I think you probably can only use N-words or something. I don't know what it is, but I wonder if these cops in Charlottesville are also white supremacists. I know that's like hard to imagine that law enforcement in the South would be, sympathetic to these types of views, but there's video out there of these Nazis pushing against the riot line, like the cop line with all their shields and stuff, just straight up pushing them like a rugby scrum or something, and the cops just stood there and let it go. So
it is impossible to imagine those pictures and the people on the other side of those shields being, residents of Ferguson or Black Lives Matter activists. It's just impossible to imagine. Frankly, it's very hard for me to imagine that, white protesters, your average, your Occupy protesters could get away with bringing their own shields and pushing back against the cops without getting plunked on the head with a nightstick. I mean, I find that very hard to believe. I don't even know if I've ever seen that scene, frankly.
Yeah, that was the first I think I've ever seen anything like that. I know I would never try that because I would assume that I would get my head smashed in. And I'm a straight white dude, 6'2", you can't mess with me in any way, shape, or form. But like those guys will mess you up in a heartbeat and get around you and beat you up. But apparently, we'll let these guys go. It's just an open exchange of ideas. Finally, the National Guard. The governors can activate the National Guard, correct? I thought that's one of their powers. So let this just be a lesson. Maybe Terry McAuliffe didn't take this thing very seriously. But going forward, if people don't activate the National Guard when these type of events are about to happen, they're coming.
That's why
then it's on you.
I found that confusing about Trump's statement. He commended the National Guard, and I don't think they were there.
For working smart.
I don't think they were there. I think somebody in the White House probably saw the images of those militia guys and assumed they were National Guard, because I don't think the National Guard was brought out. I haven't seen any reporting to that effect.
That's the National Guard 2.0. It's Trump's brown shirts,
I mean,
all right, guys.
All right, appreciate the call.
Yeah.
Calling from a 312 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Let's just say I'm a 20-year member of Antifa and anti-racist action in Chicago.
Okay, fair enough. What's on your mind?
I'd like to first due to the last caller, there's a poem Bobby Seale taught us in 2003 at a workshop. It's a wonderful poem, really short. Crackers, cops, and Klan go marching in the streets hand in hand. It's something that we should all learn, take to heart, and understand that the system that we live in is a white supremacist system, and the cops reinforce white supremacy. So when you see them holding back and you see white supremacists beating clergymen like you saw in Charlottesville, that is the reason. They are inherently a white supremacist organization.
Fair enough. I mean, it's shocking to me what they allowed these people to get away with.
Absolutely. But I would like to make another statement if I could.
Please.
Okay. Basically, for the longest time, we have been fighting Nazis in the streets. For the last 3 decades, Antifa and anti-racist action have been in your larger cities, keeping Nazis out of your back alleys, in the dirty parts of your cities. We've been doing this hard fight without any thanks from liberals. And we don't need thanks from liberals. But we have consistently received derision, people saying that we are just as bad as Nazis for fighting the Nazis. And there still is today a narrative that we are only talking about speech. Like your previous caller, he was saying, I don't know why they need guns or sticks to say what they need to say. It isn't that they need guns or sticks to say what they need to say, but if you read Nazi fascist doctrine going back from the 30s, you will always find that it is inherent in their program to use violence as a form of intimidation. They are master terrorists, and they always have been, and they will continue to use acts of violence, overt and the threat of it, to reinforce their ideology and recruit people who are weak-willed. So what we need from you now that you have seen terrorists in action, we need from you an end of the false equivocation that people defending their communities are also as bad as Nazis.
You're not talking about me specifically, because I have never.
No, I'm not talking about you. This is a message to your general listeners.
Right.
I know your listeners tend to lean more towards leftism, and I appreciate that. You always tend to have a measured discussion of all the topics, and I just needed to include this into that discussion because it is, as of right now, being left out.
Yeah, no, I think that's true, and I think your point is well taken. It's not that they need weapons so that they are heard. It's that their message is weapons. Like their message is
Correct.
one of violence, and that is the way that they communicate that. They would be, if their message did not include the threat of violence, then their message, a big chunk of their message would be gone. Then it would just be happy
Correct,
days.
and they wouldn't recruit.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Well, I appreciate the call.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
It's important because the way that they're leaving these statements vague, it's because of Antifa. They want Antifa to be included in this violent groups.
Of course.
That's the one that they want to contain in this.
Of course. And they want to say that there is a problem in society. They want to all make it somewhat passive. That car just careened into the crowd. Nobody was driving it. Calling from an 847 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, it's Josh from Chicago.
Hello, Josh from Chicago. I will spare you today. Right-wing Mandela's
Great.
not here, and you and your mom are off the hook.
Great, that's why I called in today.
What's on your mind?
I mean, I guess I also wanted to talk about how disturbing this weekend was with Charlottesville. I mean, so first off, I actually had a friend who was tear gassed in the protests.
Mm.
And thankfully he's okay. But the pictures that were there were quite disturbing. And I think the thing that I've been thinking about and wrestling with is, for me, how hypocritical those Republican senators who came out, and even the ones who called it them neo-Nazis, which is good, but it's like doing what you're supposed to do. They are still responsible for this. Like, this is their base now, like this is part of their base. And like, I think maybe the only Republican who sort of comes out clean is Kasich, because he denounced Trump immediately and never endorsed him. But for people like Rubio and all the other Republican senators, Ted Cruz, who sort of feign, righteous indignation about this, they helped bring us this man. They were very comfortable endorsing him, even when this racist rhetoric, he was spouting this racist rhetoric on the campaign trail. Even when in rallies he was telling his supporters to beat up protesters and we of course knew that was what that was code for. And they were very comfortable turning a blind eye.
Let me add to this too. First off, they all are supportive of Jeff Sessions. Jeff Sessions, who waited till 11 p.m. on Saturday to basically say that we're going to send. I mean, this is the definition of a hate crime, and on this level, right? This is a slam dunk to just send investigators down there. He had to be cajoled by Republican senators who were very worried that this was all just too naked and blatant. And so he's going to send investigators down there, and I can assure you right now where that ends. But he's going to send investigators down there, and they declared it. They did it late. He had to be cajoled into doing it. The man is a professional racist, And the idea that the media would heap praise on Republicans as if, it's what's amazing about this is that it presumes a narrative. It subverts that narrative, the premise of their point, right? Like, look, Republicans aren't part of this. Thank God they've come out. Look at the ones who've come out and said it's not appropriate. Like, you're not reporting that Democrats have really come out strongly against this. It at once accepts the premise, like, it's really hard for Republicans to come out and do this because this is who they are. I mean, honestly,
it's who they are.
But at the same time, they'll heap praise on them for not being, for suspending for a moment who they are, and by who they are, I mean where they get their support. Their existence as a Republican politician, as an elected Republican official, is significantly, depending on who the person is, reliant on this type of white supremacy, fascism, out-and-out hate. It's reliant upon it. And the idea that they get a pass because of that is grotesque. It's grotesque.
Yeah. And I also I just want to say, two things quickly. First, can you imagine if Obama hadn't condemned white nationalism, or any Democrat, the outrage? Second of all, I think the sad thing about this too is I think this would have happened regardless who's president, because I think once this becomes acceptable, once this becomes a part of the mainstream, it doesn't matter if it's Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders as president. This stuff will happen, and because one of the best speeches Hillary gave, where she talked about how once crazy becomes normal, once we normalize this craziness, this kind of stuff happens. And I think, just the fact that Trump was the head of the Republican ticket, he normalizes this. Of course, they normalize it themselves anyways, but he normalizes this, and they went right along with it.
I mean, I definitely think that this would have, that Trump would have kicked it off, and it's not like he would have run for president and lost and then gone away. It would still be around. But I think, look, he is both a product of it and an accelerant of it, and but there is an open opportunity when you have a president who is encouraging of this, who stokes it, that you're going to get more of it. I mean, which is not to say that the impetus is not there, but there is an implication when you okay it. Like, in other words, it's obviously, look, this type of of bigotry and hatred has been in this country since this country has been a country. And we have made a lot of progress on in areas of institutions and in laws, a lot in some areas. In some other areas, not so much. But in terms of like the culture in certain places, you know, this makes a difference. This type of stuff makes a big difference, and unwinding it is not an easy thing, and it can lead to some very horrific things. I mean, the only thing that I'm somewhat encouraged by is sort of just the media, and I suspect on some level because, you know, like I even if this guy had come out and said like, I really think it's inappropriate for Nazis to do this, you know.
Where was that 6 months ago?
Yeah. Or, dude, that's what you based your election on.
I know.
And, you know, and if he did come out, if he comes out, if he comes out and says it himself, if he says, I specifically renounce the Nazis and the KKK, and I think they're worse than any other group that's there, even if he comes out, even if he comes out and says that, I guarantee you there's going to be people like, today's the day he's become president. Now he's pivoted.
Oh, my God.
Appreciate the call.
I'm sure after the speech he gave today, they'll do that.
Right. Appreciate it. Thanks.
All right. Yep.
Today's the day he became president. Troll all. These people are terrorists. We should treat them like such. We should treat their leaders the way we would treat clerics who tell people to strap bombs on themselves or ram cars into crowds of people. We should arrest those people too. Alex Capp, you don't send cops to deal with a situation like Charlottesville. Cops are for protecting the white supremacists and fascists or breaking up peaceful black protests. See Columbus police pepper spraying and beating 4 black protesters at Columbus Pride. Meanwhile, there was an open carry protest near campus with cops barely around. The modern institution of the police in the United States wasn't made to help the people. Joseph Ballin, the way Americans like Sean Hannity or pretty much anyone talk about casualty about committing literal genocide against an entire group of people simply because of what government they have makes my stomach churn. I'm not just talking about conservatives. I'm talking about moderates, liberals, etc. The way they treat North Koreans like they're inhuman robots without feelings. 30% of your population, 80% of your buildings are destroyed by a foreign invading force. That would occupy the South for the next 67 years, performing hostile war games towards said country. You might see why North Korea would want nuclear weapons to protect themselves. If North Korea wants nukes, that's not my concern, nor do I believe they would ever use them. The United States, on the other hand, has used them twice. PM Retip. What's the over-under on when Alex Jones attributes the terrorist involving the car in Charlottesville to be a false flag? I mean, I'd be surprised if that already hasn't happened. If he did
It's already happening.
Okay.
Alex Jones and Gavin McInnes, I guess, we're talking about. I didn't watch it, but they were both talking about it being a false flag.
He's a piece of shit. He's a piece of shit. That's why. You know, he was very quick. He's savvy enough to know, like, we're not involved in that. My guys were not involved in that at all. Alt-right. That's why. The words alt-right are synonymous with KKK neo-Nazis. Obviously, these people aren't Nazis because the Nazis were fixed in a period of time. It was just a moniker for a group of fascists who got together and decided to kill millions of people in gas chambers. I'm moving from Silicon Valley to East Tennessee next month, says Drewski. And on top of the anxiety and stress of Muse itself, being in the South really has me nervous. Luckily, the area I'm moving to, I like to think is fairly progressive, but still kind of crazy. Also, there's a photo going around that shows the moment of impact of the terrorist slamming those people and counter-protesters, hitting his car with bats and other objects. People are trying to actually justify this by saying he was attacked first and the anti-alt-right protesters are the violent thugs here. Honestly, what the F is this? I mean, there's a misunderstanding. This guy just drove his car into this crowd. He wasn't protecting himself. He drove into them. This was a head-on collision like this.
Do you charge him with like multiple counts of attempted murder then with like 45 given by how many people were in that crowd, or what? How do you think that works?
I would think I don't know exactly. I mean, they've charged him with second-degree murder. And then I think there'll be other charges. I would imagine you've got, there's probably a specific statute about some type of like trying to take out that many people, but there'll be federal charges of hate crimes. Quick side note, I was in Tennessee 2 years ago hanging out with my girlfriend at her sister's house one night, enjoying a beautiful evening on the outside patio, having some drinks, when a pickup truck sped down the street multiple times with dudes in the back with a megaphone shouting, "The South will rise again. Happy Monday." Asthma grapefruit. Thank you, Sam. Nothing I can add to Trump's refusal to address terrorism in America. I will say this. Some of the other new media on the left, it really disappointed me at this time. Perhaps it's a lack of effort to educate themselves. To Google, I don't know. But I can't express how much I appreciate you doing what you're doing at times like these. Thank you. Historic Larry. Sorry, Merck CEO, but your company literally manufactured drugs for the Nazis during World War II. Jay Tingle. Damn. 6'2"? No way I'm going to tangle with straight white guy Chris Lapaco, says Jay Tingle. Cool J 146. Some people are mad at the ACLU for being free speech absolutists, even the white nationals. What is your take? I think that the ACLU has a role to play. I certainly understand individuals working there who say, like, I'm not down for this and I got to go. I don't know the details of the Milo Yiannopoulos case. So I'm not, and I don't know about any specific, cases per se, but the ACLU has got to do that. They've got to serve that function. And it's important. That doesn't mean there can't be counter protests. That doesn't mean that there shouldn't be, look, I'm sure we've had periods in our history where the prospect of people coming out armed to the teeth create this dynamic, but the proliferation of weapons like this and the organized structures of these paramilitaries to go in and feel like they're on a mission to protect the right of white nationalists to speak, no. That shit's nuts. It's nuts. And I don't know how we deal with that. I really don't. I don't know how you deal with it from a legal perspective. And I guess you get the cops there, but there has to be some ability for the state to say, like, oh, we've got 50 people on the streets right now in a fairly tense situation who are carrying weapons ostensibly to protect some people. No. We're going to declare a state of potential emergency. It only can last 12 hours or whatever the statute is, which means no one can carry weapons. And you know what? I feel pretty comfortable, even if we're in a position of tyranny. If that's used, that 12-hour statute's used for tyrannical purposes, well, that's when you have the fight. But it's sick. Reptilian Overlord. The national media calls out the funding of GOP candidates associated with the alt-right. Pressure RNC chair to cut funding any GOP candidate aligned with the alt-right. Indeed, Dolink, John Fugel saying Obama set back race relations. Sounds a lot better than Obama really upset all the racists. Mindless of media, continued speculation about what Donald Trump should say is asking him to perform like an organic grinder monkey from words others write from. Better see what his brain really thinks. He's so oblivious to reality, I want him to just shut up. From a Friday Rachel Maddow show, explosive deep doo-doo of Trump's finances going back years. David K. Johnson added a lot to her timeline. No wonder he's scared. Best she's ever done. King of Clayland. Hey, Sam, after this incident this weekend, I'm seeing a lot of focus on Bannon, Gorka, and Miller. Do you think there will be an attempt to use this as an excuse to get them fired? I, for one, hope this happens swiftly and blame be put on them, but I also hope they tie Trump to it. It's interesting what's going on now from that respect. And I do think this is going to create some pressure to get rid of at least Bannon and Miller and Gorka. But here is McMaster on Meet the Press with Chuck Todd. Now, there's a big war going on in the White House. McMaster got rid of a couple of white nationalists who were on the National Security Council writing 7-page manifestos on the so-called cultural Marxists and the social justice warriors.
Parenthesis.
Parenthesis. And McMaster fired 2 of them. Apparently, Trump was mad. And now there's a story going around that McMaster is about to get attacked as having a drinking problem, which is supposedly going to motivate Donald Trump to fire him because he's a teetotaler or toller. Here is McMaster on Meet the Press refusing to answer whether or not he and Bannon can continue working together. Let's hear it.
Can you and Steve Bannon still work together in this White House or not? I get to work together with a broad range of talented people, and it is a privilege every day to enable the national security team.
You didn't answer. Can you and Steve Bannon work in that same White House?
I am ready to work with anybody who will help advance the president's agenda and advance the security, prosperity of the American people.
Do you believe Steve Bannon does that?
I believe that everyone who works in the White House, who has the privilege, the great privilege every day of serving their nation, should be motivated by that goal.
Okay. General McMaster, the National Security Advisor.
Wow. That's some pretty... you wonder if that is... I mean, I don't even know how to interpret that. I mean, obviously, he refuses to say it, right? He refuses to... I mean, he refuses to even say, look, I'm going to serve the president. If the president wants me to serve with anybody in that White House, I will do it.
That's what Scaramucci did with Reince. It's Trump's decision. I'll live with it.
And it sounds to me like McMaster has basically said to the president or to somebody in there, like, I don't know if I can work with this guy. And doesn't want to contradict himself on television. Because he could clearly have said something more diplomatic. So it's quite possible that what's going on might put that pressure on Bannon. Meanwhile, the mooch, gone but not forgotten, was on ABC with political director Rick Klein. He asked the mooch if Steve Bannon was a white nationalist. Here's what the mooch had to say.
And the white nationalist, the white supremacist, in your view?
I don't know. I mean, I've never sat down with Steve Bannon and said, hey, are you a white nationalist or a white supremacist? But I think the toleration of it by Steve Bannon is inexcusable.
You know, I almost want to invite him on the show to ask him, is the toleration of it by Donald Trump inexcusable? I mean, because if Steve Bannon is excusing it, and Steve Bannon is his chief political strategist, clearly Donald Trump must be tolerating it. Right? I mean, it's not like Steve Bannon's going home and he's saying like, well, I got the Nazis congregating in my backyard again, but I'm just going to let them, I'll tolerate it. I mean, he's tolerating it professionally, politically, and he's the chief strategist for the president of the United States. So even the mooch thinks you got a problem. Calling from a 404 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, it's Josh in Atlanta.
Well, Josh, what's on your mind?
Yeah, I was just like, I don't know, Kasich doesn't get, a couple of things. One is like, my main overall point is like, just like Michael was saying, like how Russia makes everyone stupid, apparently Nazis make everyone stupid. Like, you get this H.A. Goodman guy who I didn't look at much, but I saw on Twitter, he's like, oh, this is all because Democrats take lobbying money from private prisons. And then you get, like, of course, Miritan and Joy and Reed and those types being like, oh, well, see, this is because the Sanders crowd doesn't do such and such, and they're not with us, blah, blah, blah. And it's like the person who was run over was IWW, and two of the other people who were injured in the car crash,
or DSA people,
injured badly, I guess, were DSA ISO. But that's being just completely looked over and washed out. Like, no one's, don't mention that the person who died was a Sanders supporter. That can't get out at all.
I mean, I haven't seen. To be honest with you, I do my best to stay away from Neera Tanden's tweets. But
I only saw it by proxy. I definitely. I also do my best to stay away.
But the idea that anybody in any, I mean, look, I think there's validity to the argument that Bernie Sanders did not have effective outreach to the African American community. But the idea that Bernie Sanders or Bernie Sanders supporters are in any way responsible for stuff like this is just absurd and beyond absurd. It's really effed up because, like you say, and I would imagine, frankly, there was a lot more than those three who were Bernie supporters who were out there. And certainly, I mean, I think there was a lot of different folks out there, but there were contingents from I would say that I wouldn't be surprised if there were, I don't know. I mean, it's possible there could have been Republicans there in that group too, but certainly from the center to, the anarchic left, I would imagine you had protesters out there. So it's absurd to make any to say anything like that. But folks like that are going to try and make hay, and I don't know. I mean, look, there's this narrative about Bernie Sanders that I think folks like Neera Tanden and maybe Joy Reid are trying to communicate to the African American community. Sanders has to get out there and dispel those notions.
I think even beyond him, it's their kind of demonization of the entire left. But the thing that's interesting is you get someone like H.A. Goodman or Tim Black, and they almost personify, or like the H.A. Goodmans and the Joanne Reeds, like personify each other's takes on their sides.
Yes, they're
it's
completely
like
completely self-reinforcing. And it's a problem. I mean, it's a real problem.
And it feels like the Russia debate, like their debate over Nazis and like H.A. Goodman types going like, oh, well, you shouldn't go out there and Antifa shouldn't be out there because it's just, these guys aren't Nazis. This isn't real. This is just a hoax by the DNC to, to get people to support Hillary. And then Joanne Reed's like, oh, well, all the, where are all the socialists and the Sanders and the Bernie bro types out here standing up for black people's rights when it's that whole group that the car ran into, I'm pretty sure was mostly ISO, DSA, IWW type.
I'll tell you something.
It's just like complete talking past the actual people on the ground.
Yes, and the thing is, like, they're ignoring that fact, and it shouldn't be relevant in the first place. But, but I'll tell you, if I had a couple extra $1 million to spare, I feel like I would make a separate Twitter just for like for about 24 people, and just let them have at it, and just create a bunch of dummy accounts so they think they have an audience to do that.
The corollary is
one last super small final point is on the cops. Like, in that situation, I think the best thing they could have done to some extent would to be passive in general, because like and I was kind of surprised. I was almost surprised shooting didn't start. But if someone had started shooting out there, you'd be talking about how there are hundreds injured.
Yes.
And
Yes,
40,
I
50
agree.
people dead.
I think that what they failed to do was less about like getting in there and getting on these guys with guns, but they failed to from the beginning have a plan to make sure that people were separated, physically separated. Like I'm talking about like literally a rolling barrier, you know. So I don't know. I mean, I can understand it on some level. Like the cops are there and they're like, do we really want to engage these, I don't know, 50, 100 guys who have these semi-automatic weapons? I mean, you know, you don't want a bloodbath. And they ended up getting, you know, I imagine that there's going to be some, I don't know what, you know, I don't know. I mean, I hope that there is some lessons to be learned from this, you know, from the cops, but they certainly wouldn't tolerate that type of behavior from non-fascists, that's for sure. Appreciate the call.
A corollary to that, what they're saying, how they don't mention the Bernie supporter thing is how, I think it was Charles Blow mentioned that this was the white working class that was out there. And that you don't get those type of rifles unless you have a lot of money. Like the kitted out militia guys, like it's not a working class issue.
All those guys and those carrying those torches were not the white working class. They're all going to college. Yeah. They're all half those kids going to college. King of Clayland. Hey, Sam, after that, okay. Thames Darwin. Sam, white guy arrested a short time ago attempting to deploy a car bomb in Oklahoma City, of all places. That's not a dog whistle. That's a bullhorn. Jesus, really? You know, I got, you know, somebody linked to this online. On the internet, yeah. On Twitter. Story from 95. 2 Oklahoma senators criticized some of President Clinton's remarks in the aftermath of the Oklahoma City bombing because they felt he got too political about it. Because he mentioned the promoters of paranoia on the airwaves because he mentioned the promoters of paranoia. For the president to make any comments, I'm going to use a Southern voice. I don't know if these guys were, but it was Inhofe and Nichols. To make comments, and many others, to make comments that perhaps this was a product of the far right and then not identify who that far right is, I don't think serves any useful purpose. Jesus. All right, let's just have a little bit of comic relief. Here is Donald Trump. Again, forgetting where he is, why he's there. Maybe he got thrown off by the fact that he didn't feel comfortable denouncing neo-Confederates and fascists and Nazis in a singular fashion. But he was supposed to sign a bill, which was probably just a resolution, probably naming a post office, but they've got to have a big party for it. VA funding. And he walks off, and then, of course, he plays it off as if like he was never told that the signing was going to be 3 feet from his podium where everyone was gathered around a desk. Here he is.
Mr. President, how do you respond to white nationalists who say they're participating in Charlottesville because they support you?
They'd like me to sign the bill here instead of outside, so I think we'll do that. Okay? Thank you.
Yeah, that's the implication. Usually it's outside. I didn't see this desk with the bill and the pen there and the 8 people standing around it. And so usually what we would do is sign it out there. But now they want me to sign it over here. This must have been a late thing. Did they just bring this desk in with all these people? I didn't see it. Jackass. Calling from a 916 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hello, Sam. It's Nico from San Francisco.
Hey, Nico, how's it going?
Not too bad. I wanted to comment on of course, the big event over the weekend. Now, I've seen some contingents on the left. They've taken the anti-Nazi thing to a point where I feel a little bit concerned, because I see that people are saying, oh, well, at this point, if you see someone doing a Nazi salute, you should hit them in the face. That is the next step. Now, I, of course, support Antifa. I live in the area where there's a lot of Antifa people around. So it's not as if I'm defending Nazis in any way. The problem is that people are just going fully against the ACLU in terms of how they view the First Amendment, and it's frightening because I see a split developing between people who want to defend the First Amendment and the right to free speech, but also I see a lot of threats of violence against Nazis, and I don't support it. I just don't.
Well, I mean, I think, look, I believe that we need an ACLU, and they need to be very rigorous in that way. And that's what their role is, among others, in society, and it enhances that role in areas that we like. So I would never, maybe some specifics of some specific cases, I would be critical of the ACLU, but in terms of that mission, broadly speaking, I wouldn't be. I don't know that I would advocate violence in any situation. But I would. But I think I've said before that there are situations where I wouldn't condemn it either. I mean, if folks want to go and punch a Nazi in the face, look, they're willing to go and deal with the charges of battery.
If that's the price they're willing to pay.
I mean. But I certainly, would condemn. Oh, Jesus! What are you talking on there? Like some type of? Are you talking through a megaphone?
Oh, wait, me? I'm sorry. I apologize for that. No.
But I mean, I think I certainly wouldn't, and I would condemn any type of serious violence that would be in any way life-threatening. But
right. Well, I always thought the left was supposed to be principally nonviolent. I thought the left was supposed to never advocate for violence against free speech. It's concerning to see.
Well, I don't know if that's accurate. I don't know if that's accurate of the left definitionally.
Certainly not historically.
There's a lot of crossover with civil liberties and the left. And that's certainly a liberal tradition that you're talking about. But I don't know if that's the case with the left, frankly, from a historical standpoint.
That's probably, from a historical standpoint, of course you're right. I mean, look at the USSR, and that's clearly that's not historically accurate. I thought in an age where the Green Party exists, where we want to end wars overseas, where we want to cut military spending and do things for people here at home. I just thought it was a lot more altruistic than I've been seeing.
I think equating the desire of people to punch a Nazi in the face with not wanting to engage in imperialism and bombing people I think that's a bit of a stretch. I think you can hold.
Of course, if there's a threat of violence, of course I support people's right to defend themselves. That is not at all what I'm saying. The problem is that when people just advocate for violence just for people expressing their viewpoints, I get concerned.
Yeah, I get that. I think, I think it sort of gets very situational from my perspective in that, what does represent violence? I would not, back in when I was a kid, I remember the neo-Nazis marching in Skokie, right? In Skokie, Illinois, where there was a high concentration of Holocaust survivors. Seems to me there's a legitimate, depending on the contingent and who goes in there, there's a legitimate argument that you're trying to incite violence by just the very presence. But I think broadly speaking, I support the right of those Nazis to march in the context of like the, but at the same time, I also, I'm not going to condemn anybody who wants to make it physically uncomfortable for them to be there. I just,
Oh, of course not.
Yeah, I mean, so it's a case by case basis. When you start talking about sort of some type of mass violence or some type of mass threats, but look, I think in this day and age, particularly when you've got and I gotta hang up on you because whatever you got going on your phone there is like kicking back some bad feedback. But let me just.
Oh, my apologies.
No problem. I just think in this day and age, when you have the ascendance of these type of people, and there's power in, they have power in the White House, and they have power in our government. I think you need to show that there is a will to fight back. And in some instances, I think that can be communicated by just showing up. But, at one point, sometimes maybe you need more. I mean, I don't, it's always good to have a movement where there's a part of that movement is, going to get extreme. And that type of threat sometimes needs to be met with, a threat that shows that you can't be pushed around. That's certainly the game they're playing. They got to show up with guns. WTFF. Please compare and contrast the murders by confirmed white supremacists and those by Antifa. Well, exactly. We have 3, I think, murders now by white supremacists this year.
Also the bombing attempt last week. Well, not attempt, bombing of the mosque last week.
Right. We should really reserve her. Senator Chuck Schumer, after the events of the last weekend, what do you think about armed leftist socialist groups like Redneck Revolt? All right, so there was a group called Redneck Revolt that was also there. They had weapons. They were on a completely different side of the park, apparently. So they were not in the mix, but they show up with guns. John Brown Militia, Huey P. Newton Gun Club, and the Red Preppers. I mean, I don't like weapons being brought to these events. And frankly, I'm unclear how that's going to help. Like, what is the scenario where that is effective? With that said, let's see where stuff is heading. I mean, that shit could have turned really ugly really easily. And I think the cops deserve, a lot of criticism for the way they prepared for this. But I'm not quite sure I would want them to, engage with people with weapons, with all those people around the streets. Attorney Andrew, I'm not sure this was brought up earlier, but it was kind of stunning to see Indivisible put out a giant list of organizations it was proud to have supporting the counter-protest and vigils for Charlottesville. Yet it failed to mention DSA, ISO, the IWW, or Antifa, even though members of those groups were the victims of the terrorist attack on Saturday. Wow. I didn't see that. Likewise, newspapers like the Houston Chronicle didn't mention Houston DSA in the list of orgs who organized a vigil on Sunday. I only bring this up because we know the alt center will continue to claim, and in fact did so on Saturday, including people like Neera Tanden, that brocialists are secretly racist, even though they were literally hit by the fucking car this weekend. Yeah, I guess I just got to pay more attention to that element. I don't see it. Bullprog, it's almost like those whiny PC activists and social justice warriors were all trying to warn us about allowing hate speech to be promoted on television in college campuses. Did you see that Nazis were allowed to push against the police line Saturday? A big crowd of them pushing against the cops' shields. No way in hell leftist protest gets away with that. Crapo Zappo, I linked to this show through your Libertarian Caller videos maybe 3 or 4 years ago. I have been revisiting them, and I have to say literally everyone has phone issues. I laughed and laughed all over again. Anyway, my actual point, thanks for a great show. I'm a member now. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. (415) area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from? 415 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
This is Joseph in Marin.
Joseph, what's on your mind?
Well, two things. One thing, I had social things going on. Of course, there was a Paul at the party. But I was thinking that this seems an inevitable situation given that Donald Trump became president and how he became president and the kind of stuff he's been spewing, let alone his history. I caught up a little last night looking at clips from CNN, and it seemed like their whole tactic was as long as he says the right words and maybe chastises his advisors on the right and maybe gets rid of Bannon or Gorka, everything will be fine. And it's just sort of, there's no sense of history. There's no sense of, his whole history going back to the Central Park Five and his discriminating against people who were renting from him, and we could go, and let alone the campaign he ran and birtherism. It's hardly even brought up. I mean, it's like, oh no, the president's not a racist. It's just the people around him that are, and this is coming from the so-called liberal alternative media. I mean, it's part of the normalization again. In other words, Van Jones was there, and he was very outraged, but at the same time, he's backpedaling, going, I give the president his due when, like, what are you giving him any dues for, Van? I mean, I just don't get it. I mean, there's a sense that,
look, some people are trying to
be in the mix.
Some people are trying to brand themselves, right, as not being a bomb thrower, as being someone who reaches out. And in some instances, okay, I can see the value of that. Depending on, and I can't get into anybody's head and see what their long-term agenda is. I know that, like, I'll go on television and do some segments that I'm not terribly thrilled about, so that I have the opportunity, once every 2 years to be on set when we're arguing against war, or, when I can tell Thomas Friedman he's a jackoff or something like that. So I can understand that, people have different agendas, but yes, I think broadly speaking, the bottom line is this was fairly inevitable. I mean, I can understand what your point is. I mean, I think, we could always hold out hope, like, oh, he was just pretending who he was, to get into office. And then Donald Trump was going to build an ice rink for everybody. And, he was going to disavow. He's really a secret, whatever, fine. You want to hope that after the fact because it makes you feel better. But this is a guy, you're right, whose entire his entire political project was essentially launched, at least in the Republican, by a full-on racist assault on Barack Obama.
Exactly.
And
of course,
his appeal was not just based upon that, but grew off of that. And, everybody was saying it during the campaign, and there is a constant look. I mean, to a certain extent, there's a certain amount of human nature, right? You always, like, when you're in a situation of crisis, I think it's human nature to sort of say, like, oh, look, it looks like the tornado's winding down, or Or maybe the boat's not taking on as much water as we thought. I mean, there's this compulsion to, and I think particularly in the media, it's very strong, to want this guy to just to play within the lines that are drawn.
Yeah, color within the lines.
Yes,
yeah, exactly.
Because it makes it much easier. Like it doesn't, and I think a lot of these people, their careers are a function of like being able to talk about things within those lines. And when they can't, they're afraid that they can't get back in. Like what if there's a terrorist attack and he acts like a normal human being? It's going to put me outside of the realm and I'm going to have to reverse myself or some strange guy. I don't know.
Well, I think it's part of the normalization process that they want to make something that isn't normal.
Yes.
And within the realm of their concept of normality. I mean, they don't really talk about the racist history of the United States or the history of the, police in this country. They were initially slave catchers. There's certain, and I mean, it reminds me what Gore Vidal always said. We call the United States of amnesia.
Yeah. We should play. We've got a vacation coming up, and next week we should pull some of the Gore Vidal stuff.
One more thing to say. The other thing was that the other part is that there's a I don't know what you'd call it out there. There's a sense that nothing is real anymore. I mean, you got Alex Jones spouting nonsense, and people then are connected to other sites that lead them to more nonsense. I have run into some people that are. Someone told me that Sandy Hook was a false flag, and all this stuff. The deep state. It's so deep. I even know about it. It's so hidden. People want to believe this stuff that only clouds their mind of any kind of judgment of anything. It has become part of the body politic now.
Yeah, it's going to get worse.
And how do we get rid of Alex Jones? At least get YouTube to pull him. How do we do that?
Make Google a not-for-profit company. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know.
All right. Well,
appreciate the call.
Thanks for all the good work, Sam. Bye.
Thanks, man. Calling from a 423 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Sam. It's Zach in Tennessee. How are you, man?
Good. How you doing, Zach?
Pretty good. Shitty weekend.
Yeah.
Our president is a fuckstick. This took me back to I just want to make one quick comment and then ask you a quick question. This took me back to the darkest day of the campaign last year, which was Friday, October 28th. It was the day that the Comey letter came out, but more significantly, it was that day that the Bundy group got acquitted out in Oregon. You remember that night when you had Cliff on the show? It was really good. I mean, I read that night for the first time about this Spencer, this little mama's boy. Okay. And I've been waiting for this to happen ever since. I got sick that night. Literally, I got sick of of disgust. And I just could feel this crap coming to the surface.
And there's going to be more of this because there's going to be we just saw it in Kentucky. There was a mayor, I think, of Lexington who said we're going to take down a couple of, we're going to move a couple of Confederate statues, and I think you're going to see some more of that, and they're going to use this as an assault on their heritage. We're going to see more of it. We're going to see more of it, and it's definitely going to get worse before it gets better, and hoping it gets better.
What do you think about the last year before the election? I kept hearing, well, the demographics of this younger generation will, they were going to break the bonds of conservatism and forever move, to the left. It seems like this group of young white men in there from age 20 to 35 are really unspooled.
I think, broadly speaking, that generation is actually doing pretty well. But I think, look, there's, you can hear it there in terms of you will not replace us, right? Like there is this, I mean, I've been saying this for a long time, but it's about aggrievement. It's a cultural aggrievement. It's a political aggrievement, sense that we don't have the same amount of power that we had before. And that is, as a race, as a specific demographic. And I think, broadly speaking, what you're talking about is true. Electorally, though, it's going to be difficult because there are also, a tremendous amount of voter disenfranchisement, about voter suppression, and we won't know for six years probably how successful they have been. On that accord.
Well,
I appreciate the call, Zach. Thanks. Hang in there, man.
Zach. Okay.
Yeah, it is.
Take it easy.
Yeah, I think previous generations, if we had cell phones and we could capture them, probably could show a similar sort of force or numbers that they showed on Saturday night. It's just the political situation and technology, right?
More.
Yeah, exactly. Like that was just hidden. That's not something they put on ABC in 1984, right?
Well, no, you could see more of it, but David Duke is still in his outfit and at that time running for governor
on TV.
Oh yeah,
right.
But yes, broadly speaking, stuff like that not as captured. But look, the pushback from them is going to be greater because in 1984 nobody was talking about taking statues down. Calling from an 814 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Sam. This is Greg from up in northwestern Pennsylvania.
Hey, Greg.
How you doing? Look, I'm old enough to remember an incident that took place in probably in the mid-'60s, where the Black Panthers rose up in the inner cities in California and armed themselves.
Yes,
basically with shotguns, whatever they
that's
could
where
get their hands
that's where
on.
gun control came from. Ronald Reagan.
Right, Reagan. Thank you. Reagan flipped his lid.
Yeah.
All right. And what followed was the whole idea of the gun control thing. Exactly. So, I'm also old enough to remember a book by Hunter Thompson, Fear and Loathing on the Campaign Trail 72. And on its cover was a skull with an American flag painted on it and swastikas rising in the eye sockets. It's a famous cover. You could probably Google it and find it right now. And these things have been chronicled by any number of writers. Thompson was very good at it. There's been an undercurrent. I live in an area where guns are just, you grew up, that's what you found. I mean, that's how you grew up. There were weapons everywhere. I wasn't. I wasn't a hunter. I didn't participate in that. And I'm at a point in my life now where my family, some of it, that's all they talk about is hunting and recreational weapons. And I'm just not in that. But what we saw down in Charlottesville was a pairing of these weapons, all right, with this alt-right movement given cover by, let's face it, the NRA.
Yep.
And now Trump covers his ass today. That's all he did. And everybody on the right is going to understand that he had to do it.
Yep.
And the fact of the matter is that those weapons were there to intimidate the left. And we're not going to see that same reaction if people on the left arm themselves. Believe me, that's not going to happen. Plus, they chose Charlottesville because, let's face it, 40,000 people, college campuses, there's, the police force, how many are there? They would have had to put that National Guard on the streets from the very beginning, doing exactly what you're talking about, a moratorium on weapons, a moratorium on shields and helmets. You want to march? You can do the candlelight vigil. You can go, you can pretend it's Nuremberg all you want, but you can't have weapons. You can't have shields.
Right.
You can't have helmets. I also have family in the Great Northwest where, these people started, there was a current on the left where people were blacking themselves out, wearing helmets, throwing back tear gas, basically looting and smashing property, and that was used for all sorts of, a number of events took place. I mean, it was the same at World Trade Organization. So that left response is going to be totally quelched by Trump if he has his way. They're not going to. That's not going to. Would never be acceptable. Not at all. If they flip their lid over people smashing windows and jumping on cars, then we should crack down on every college campus after they win a championship.
Right.
So, I just, when you bring weapons to this thing, it's just going to escalate beyond all control if it's not quelched by the federal government.
I agree with you.
States are not going to be able to do it on themselves.
Listen, I got to jump.
Sam.
I appreciate the call.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
All right, I got to tell you folks, I got 18 calls on the line. Literally 18 calls with people who have held anywhere from over 65 minutes down to one who's just got on. So I'm going to take 3 or 4 more calls. If you haven't been on for a long time, you might as well hang up right now. I apologize, folks. We just
you bet.
Calling from a 509 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Sam. This is Ethan. I'm calling from Washington State.
Ethan, what's happening?
Yeah, I just wanted to call and give a little bit of an update about kind of what's going on out here. We've had a couple things. First of all, I wanted to talk about how I live in Seattle, and yesterday they had an alt-right rally downtown in Westlake Park, and so it was a big response. A bunch of people came out and booed them and everything, and they weren't explicitly neo-Nazis, and they didn't have a huge turnout. But they did have the park. They were there. There were some like militia guys and Proud Boys, the Cascade Legion, and just like a whole variety of alt-right people were there, and so we went out and we counter-protested and we had a good showing, but that's also happening up here. So I just wanted to mention that was going on. I have to be kind of brief because I'm at work. But the other issue I wanted to talk about was they found out that one of the guys who was at the rally in Charlottesville holding the torch was the president of the college Republicans at Washington State University.
Lovely.
So, yeah, and like they have his ID, he's on YouTube, like it's the guy. And so a lot of people who wrote in and complained to the president about how like, hey, the president of the college Republicans at WSU is, like he's a neo-Nazi, and he wrote explicit things about, defending Hitler and things like that. And you can look up his name. I'm not sure if it's appropriate to name him on the call.
Yeah, it's not.
But yeah, and so.
I mean, you can if you want. I mean, I don't care. I mean, I don't feel that strong about one way or the other. But, all right, but look, one more quick point, because then I got to go.
Gotcha.
Someone just said Joey.
I just want to say that if you look. Oh, yeah, sorry. I just want to point to, if you go to the College Republican Facebook page for WSU, like, I'm pretty sure that's the guy. And there's a picture of them standing with Kathy McMorris Rogers. I don't know if anyone's held her feet to the fire, but the response from the university president was like, well, like, this is a place for a variety of ideas, and just like the most tepid possible response. And I think it's really disgusting. And if you're a WSU alumni, you need to be writing to the president and complaining about it. And that's all.
All right. Appreciate the call. Thanks.
Thank you.
I mean, I think, look, I don't know if university presidents should be in the business of criticizing their neo-Nazi students. But everybody else should, and I got no problem, if you're going to have a business, shouldn't hire neo-Nazis. And if, of course, the guy's involved in any violence, that's a different story. But calling from a 603 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hi, Sam. This is Matt from Bedford, New Hampshire.
Hello, Matt. What's on your mind? Got to be quick.
Oh, yeah, sorry. So I just wanted to call and say that there's a lot of attention in the last political campaigns on people saying the right thing, that this is radical Islamic terrorists, and, like, where are the moderate Muslims speaking out? And so I just want to call in as a white man and say that I am a moderate, and I condemn the white behavior that happened in Charlottesville. Doesn't represent what it is to be white in America, in my opinion.
Well, it's a real shame because I haven't heard anybody else say that. And I wish there was more whites who would renounce their whiteism and learn that their whiteness needs to be. I mean, let's face it. Whiteness the mother lode of bad ideas, right? And
I mean, some people
we
are
just
saying
need
that.
more
I mean,
whites.
I don't know.
We just need more whites to come out and condemn
Yeah,
whiteness and reform whiteness.
They're prone to violence.
It's a problem. It's a problem. Second thing I want to say is that I don't know if you covered it, but there's this dude on Twitter, and his name is Baked Alaska, and he used to work for He used to work for BuzzFeed, and he's one of these guys. I think is really important because this is what they did in the run-up to World War II. Is that they'd make a joke about things and dehumanize people, like, oh, haha, we're just saying Jew, but we're not being anti-Semitic and all this stuff. And this motherfucker goes to the rally and gets bear maced and cries like a bitch. And he's like, oh, I need more milk. It has so much to tell me. Oh, it's the most beautiful. If you need a pick-me-up from this weekend, which was a total shit show, I recommend going and looking up this dude getting maced in the face and crying on the ground, the stupid white supremacist fuck.
All right, well, I will check that out.
More like Maced, Alaska.
Nice. Thanks for the call.
Also, he's saying he can't see anymore, and so just throwing the dad joke out there that he cannot see anymore. Nazi, get it? Got it? Nazi.
I appreciate the call. Nazi. All right, final caller of the day. You calling from a 215 area code, folks. I'm sorry if it's not you. One of the other 11 people still on the phone. Gotta say goodbye. Calling from a 215 area code. Who's this?
Hi, Sam. It's Mindy.
How are you, Mindy?
Hi. Was it your birthday this weekend? Happy birthday.
No, it was Michael's,
I read
but
that.
I appreciate that.
Oh, okay. So yesterday, I was watching what was going on in Seattle.
Hmm?
And did you see that?
No, I didn't.
Okay, so...
But we just had somebody on the phone who was talking about it.
Okay, that's right. So apparently there's this group called the Patriot Prayer Group that's really a cover for KKK that's going around the country doing all of these rallies. And they're the people that were in Charlottesville also. And the one guy that's in the picture, well, I tweeted out a picture actually of it, and his name's Joey Gibson. I tweeted it out yesterday, and like people were tweeting me all kinds of information about it. Like it was going crazy. People were telling me that George Soros is backing. I did not. Now, in full disclosure, I did not vet any of this stuff right now, but people were telling me that George Soros is backing this group. They're running around in Trump Pence 2020 T-shirts, and some of them are wearing put Hillary in prison T-shirts, and they're a really organized group, and they're going around to all of these states. They're the ones, like I said, that was in...
So wait, the argument is that George Soros is funding these provocateurs, essentially, who are posing as right-wingers? And yeah, okay.
Right, they're the KKK. So, and then people were also giving me information.
Can't get George Soros to fund, progressive talk radio, but the old provocateur would be, of course, I'm going to do that.
Right. So they were also people. One person told me that Stephen King has a Confederate flag on his desk at work, and he's from Iowa.
He lives in Maine.
So this is what?
Oh, Stephen King, the congressman. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, no, not the writer. Stephen King, the congressman, has a Confederate.
I would be surprised if he didn't, frankly.
Yeah, he's got a Confederate flag, and also the only reason why Seattle didn't turn into Virginia yesterday was because the police kept the KKK people and the pro-protesters like away from each other, like wouldn't let them near each other, but. The problem is that this is going to keep happening over and over and over and over again. And they're being funded. I mean, they're really organized.
Of course they're all being funded. Of course. Milo Yiannopoulos got a ton of money from the Mercers. All of these organizations are getting money. They're getting filtered through a lot of the sort of the classic, and they're getting, I'm quite convinced that if you see somebody with a YouTube show that promotes Islamophobia, there is a lot of funding opportunities for them. A lot of them.
I mean, this is just really sick. I mean, I'm 58, so I remember what was going on in the 60s because I was a kid, and this is really I don't think that we're anywhere near a fever pitch here. I mean, I think this thing is going to go so bad that I don't know. I don't.
Well,
mean to be
Mindy,
alarmist,
hang in there, but I think it could. There's no doubt about it. I appreciate the call.
I would suggest.
Go ahead.
Just look at the picture of this guy.
Yeah, I mean, let me just say the one thing that I'm hesitant about doing is like getting into, me personally, and using this show as a vehicle to identify people because
That's what anonymous Twitter accounts are for.
I mean, yeah.
Right, now I get it. My husband was scared yesterday because I got retweeted like 700 times, and he's like, man, you're going to get in trouble big time.
Well, no, that's not what I'm afraid of. I'm just afraid of pointing out someone who's wrong. I mean, I've just seen too many of these things go sideways, and I just feel like if I'm going to engage in that, I want to be able to spend the time to make sure I'm right, and I just don't have that time right now.
Right, but you don't mind us telling you, right?
Well,
okay.
I am just nervous because I don't want to necessarily amplify something, and all of a sudden there's some dude out there who's like getting, people are protesting in front of his house, or he gets death threats, and he's like, "What? I wasn't even there. I was at my, job down at the local Denny's or whatever it is."
Right.
But I appreciate the call, Mindy.
I got it. Point well taken.
All right,
I
thanks,
get it. Point well taken.
Thanks.
Okay.
All right, talk to you later. If I'm going to do stuff like that, which I tend to want to do it with someone who is, I want to have done the work. All right. Got a lot of IMs. I'll do 5 or 10 IMs. Ready? A Square. Sam, heard a reporter from the Daily Beast on Joy Reid who, like you, reminded the Republicans clutching their pearls this weekend about Sessions. What about voting rights? So, sure, thanks for your indignation over the Klan and Nazi rally, but where are you what was your stand? Mr. and Mrs. Republican for the last 30 years, hypocrites. Yeah, of course. Trademark BS. You forgot to point out that Trump said no citizen should fear for their safety. Also, is Matt saying corollaries? Also, is Michael off because he's prepping for the Michael Brooks show? Really, how long does it take to fluff a donkey?
Corollary.
Bluesette, killing Nazis is my heritage. My dad dropped bombs on the capital of the Third Reich. His brother died in the Pacific War. Antifa since 1942. There's some history. Plants on fire. My city, Richmond, Virginia, former capital of the Confederacy, has a main artery called Monument Avenue, which is lined with Confederate statues. The discussion about taking down the statues has been going on for years. A white supremacist group has applied for permits to demonstrate here on September 16th. Should those applications for these permits be accepted, please consider showing up to protest these bigots. Smash the fash. Left is best. Will you send us an email at majorityreporters@gmail.com and let us know if that's going to happen at that time? Chappie, these neo-Confederates pray to their savior, who was a Palestinian Jew, then grab their tiki torches and march out the door chanting death to all Jews. Then in solidarity defend two lost causes. These folks are beyond comprehensible. Only the best and brightest. Trotsky would have won. The police had their back facing fascists while staring down counter-protesters. They trust neo-Nazis more than anti-fascists. Dornish snake. The governor of Virginia can call out the National Guard for events like this, but what happens when the alt-right targets a city in the state with a Republican governor? Yeah. Contagious chameleon. Sam, interview Michael Wood Jr. He's a former cop. Criticizes policing in the society for upholding white supremacy as good reform solutions. McMaster is talking like he's being held hostage. Just like Andy Kindler said, when's Hitler going to pivot? Michael Wood Jr. All right, 3 more. Fries and McFlurries. Trump normalizes violent racism like Roger Ailes normalized sexual harassment at Fox. It's always going to be there, but it becomes rampant. Youper. Wasn't all the right-wing extremism we're seeing predicted by the 2009 by the DHS? Yes, and everyone in the right freaked out about being targeted, and the Obama admin kind of walked back the report. Am I recalling that correctly? Yes. Green New Deal Dorca. When visiting friends in Berkeley a few months ago, I went to at Top Dog, a hot dog restaurant with a libertarian decor. pointed out that this libertarianism was not well-coded racism, and they thought I was just a leftist cuck. Turns out one of the employees was at the march. Haven't seen anywhere on the news that this place was super libertarian. I thought you should know. Oh, wow. Is that true?
Interesting. Might have to do a hot dog restaurant review or something.
Indeed. Obot 08. So as a handful of Republicans tweet about the evils of white supremacy, should Democratic leadership in the Congress tweet out pieces of legislation with sponsors that push these white supremacist ideas into action? Thinking the Muslim ban, the reduction of family-based immigration, voter rights changes, Kate's Law, basically anywhere the right makes claims that are detached from objective reality for the sake of white and right supremacy. Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, they should be held to account. And the final I am of the day. Redbeard, my dog whistle ears rang loud during Trump's speech at kids afraid to go outside, and we need to learn from this. All right, folks. See you tomorrow.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the lie bar, but finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in.